Okay, friends, let's talk all about the books that I read during this past quarter. So I read, I think in total, about 8 books altogether in the months of January, February, and March. So let's start off with my first book of the year. First book of the year. The first book that I read was Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones. So in this story, we follow Dana and Charisse, and they are two young ladies, I believe we follow them from like middle school all the way up until high school. And they have one thing in common, and that is their father, James Witherspoon. So they are sisters, but only one knows about the other because essentially he has two separate families. So in this story, we follow Dana and Charisse's perspectives, and we see how they both have a very different relationship with their father and with their mothers as well, because of the nature of their family dynamics. And essentially, there are a lot of secrets in the story, a lot of family secrets, a lot of things that are being kept from others in the sake of preserving this very tumultuous ecosystem that is going on. And the heart of it is these two young women, I should say, are looking for kinship. They're looking for belonging. And they could have easily found it in just each other and that sisterhood they were looking for. But because of the circumstances of their birth and of their family, it's just impossible, very much impossible. So I absolutely love this story so much. There's so much going on to protect the a certain individual in the story, and it's all out of love and care, but at the end of the day it's still hurting everyone involved. And I don't want to say too much because I really want people just to go into this book like I did, which I went into without any prior knowledge of what the story was about. And it was truly a gift. It was a pleasure to read. And if you like, complex family dramas with really well written characters, and I highly recommend this story. I gave this 5 stars. No surprise there. I don't have any other unread books now of hers. So I am just waiting with everyone else for the next book to be written, edited, and published. So I will patiently wait because every one of her books has just been a gem, and I am looking forward to reading the next one whenever it comes. The next book that I read was The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. So in this story, you follow a young woman who was taken from her family when she was about 2 or 3 years old, and she is raised by her adopted family for pretty much all her life. And it was not until later on that she learns that she was actually taken and abducted, and that she has a whole family out there that's wanting and wondering whatever happened to Ruthie. So in this book, we get two perspectives. We get the young woman's perspective as well as her older brother's perspective that was, waiting in the wings, just wanting to see, whatever happened to his baby sister that was taken all those years ago. And I really did enjoy the story. I gave it 3 stars. I kind of want to give it a 4 because now that I'm looking back at it, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed learning more about the Mi'kmaq culture, about how even like life was like in living in Nova Scotia. Also getting the young woman's perspective, Ruthie's perspective specifically, and how she was dealing with these dreams that she would have that she thought were dreams and wasn't sure if they were real or not, and just the amount of culture shock that she experienced because she grew up in a community of Indigenous people with the Mi'kmaq people, and her family that adopted her were white. And that whole dynamic was just made me very angry. But all I'll say is that it was a very well written book. I do recommend it if you're interested in reading a book that is very interesting, compelling. It was a fairly short read. And yeah, I would definitely want to read it again. I think I need to pick it up from Barnes Noble at some point soon. The next book that I read was A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And this is a classic story following Sarah, who grew up in India, but her father moved back to, I believe it was back to London, and she was living in a home for very, well-to-do young ladies, in a school essentially. But her father tragically passes away, and from that point on, her life just takes a completely different turn, and the way that she's treated by different people is completely different. And she essentially preserves her, soft heart and her good nature by, having a great imagination and just wanting to extend kindness to people no matter what her present circumstances were. And I watched the adaptation of this back in, it was a 90s adaptation. Um, and I really did enjoy it. I thought it was very cute, very sad at some points, but overall very heartwarming. And I would say the same thing about the book. It definitely met that expectation. And I picked this up at a garage sale a few years ago and just was curious about whether or not I was going to like the actual source material as much as the movie. And I will be happy to say that I did. I enjoyed it. I do recommend it for anyone who is looking for like a light classic to read. Oh, yes, I gave that book 3 stars. Next, I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is a story we follow a young woman who was, falling in love with her high school sweetheart. They got married and they were living this blissful life until he goes missing and is presumed dead. And then after that, she's kind of picking up her pieces. I believe it's like a few years after that. She is trying to pick up the pieces and moves back to her hometown and all of that. And then she ends up falling in love with a new person in her life and is pretty much on the course of getting married or is newly engaged again. And turns out her first husband was not dead and he shows back up in her life. And it's pretty much her process of figuring out what she truly wants, not just in a relationship, but out of life. This book, the experience of reading this book kind of reminded me of reading Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, where I liked the first, the first 2 thirds of the book were, just meh. They were just okay. But the last third of the book I did appreciate and enjoy. And so that's why I ended up giving it a 2.5 instead of just a flat 2. But yeah, I mean, it was okay. I think I'm kind of done with Taylor Jenkins Reid now because I read Carrie Soto's Back and I gave it a 2.5 star, or I think a 3.5. I don't remember what I gave it. Then I read Daisy Jones and the Six and I gave that 4 stars. But then this one I gave 2.5. And I'm just like, you know what? It's been 3 books and I haven't given any of her books 5 stars. And I've given one of them close to a 2. So I feel like, TJR is just not the author for me. And that's okay. The next book that I read in January was Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. And this is a story where we follow Quinn, and she is a beautiful young woman living in, I believe it's in Houston. Is it Houston or Dallas? It's in Texas somewhere. And she is at a prep school. I believe she's in her senior year of, yes, she's in her senior year. And she's in a prep school environment. She's one of very few Black people that are at her school. She has this notebook that she has where she writes down all of her deepest, darkest secrets, her lists, her plans, literally everything in her life she has written in this notebook. And unfortunately, this notebook goes missing. And she blames this young man who I believe his name was, what was his name? Carter Bennett, yes. She blames this young man for, losing it because they had met up for a study session and they kind of unknowingly swapped notebooks. And anyways, for lack of a better term, it goes missing. And then she actually gets blackmailed by somebody who is saying that you need to complete all of this, in your list. You have this major list of things you need to get done before graduation, or we're going to keep photoshopping all your deepest, darkest secrets and share it with, all of social media. So in the meantime, obviously some love is kindling between her and Carter, and there's that type of thing going on. So yeah, overall, I did enjoy the story. I gave it a 4 star. I liked the fact that it wasn't as straightforward that she was going to end up with the main love interest. There was another person that was kind of in the mix as well that she had a crush on prior to knowing Carter. And so that was interesting. I liked the mystery factor of figuring out who took the notebook and who was trying to blackmail her. I feel like that added subplot always makes these kind of young adult or even any type of romance story, it just gives another edge, a little bit, little some, and I appreciate that and I did enjoy it. I liked that it was this is a really weird thing to like, but I appreciate that Quinn was not a perfect main character, that she was flawed, she was realistic, even to the point where she wasn't a stellar, beautiful and a super stellar, student. Like she was just a regular kind of girl. And yeah, I appreciated the fact that she was working through a lot of different familial things going on, and not just with her parents, but her connection with her grandmother. There were things going on with her grandmother that made it a little bit harder to succeed in school and to really be on top of everything. And just I appreciated the, how realistic that was. And yeah, overall I did enjoy it. I understand the hype. I understand why people like it. It's been a while since I've read it at this point, but I do remember enjoying my time with it, and I'm looking forward to reading more from Joya Goffney in the future. Okay, then February came, and I was reading books, but I wasn't finishing anything. That was right before we left for our anniversary trip, and I will, link this above of the quick little mini vlog about that trip. But yeah, your girl was traveling, and she wasn't reading much. But even though all of February, kind of twiddled away and I did not read, I did read this during my trip, and that's Sula by Toni Morrison, and I read the entirety of it as I was traveling all around the place. So this story, we follow a host of different characters, but mainly it's about Sula and Nell, and they are best friends. They literally were best friends since they were 4 or 5, and essentially they were almost like one person. And you see not just their relationship, but then the different relationships that they have with both of their mothers, Sula for her grandmother as well, and then also their relationships with different people in their community, the bottom. And yeah, this story, I don't really, okay, I gave this book a 4 star. I'll start there. I gave this book 4 stars, and I did enjoy my time with it. This book really challenges you. I feel like this book pushes up against everything that you think about, like how friendships look, how not like friendship, yeah, how friendships look essentially. That's the main thing, of like what female friendships look like without any type of interference from like men. Essentially, that's one of the things that Toni Morrison talked about in the introduction. And also just like when you have somebody who is completely uninhibited, yes, who has no inhibitions at all, and how they're like moving about in the world with like no responsibility and not a care, what the results of that looks like. And it's not pretty. So with that, I will say that this book really does need to be read multiple times to fully grasp everything in it. It's written very simply. It's not like it's hard to read or hard to understand words or anything like that. The language is very easy to comprehend. It's just that the deeper themes of what's going on in this story, and yeah, it was a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. But yes, I will be probably reading this sometime in the future. I need some time though, but I will be probably reading this in the future at some point. And yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's Sula. The next book that I read in March was House of Marionne by JL, and this is an urban fantasy that follows a young woman named Kel, and she kind of has these special abilities that are kind of creepy and weird. She knows that there's something wrong with her, or at least she feels like there's something wrong with her. Her mom and her are constantly like on the run, going from like place to place and city to city and school to school. So she never really felt like at home anywhere. But then something happens where she realizes that she's actually being attacked and hunted by somebody, and she gets whisked away eventually to this prestigious, kind of magic school. And she realizes that she's part of this like huge family, like very like almost royal family called the House of Marionne. She belongs to the House of Marionne, and there's multiple houses. I believe there's like 4. And this is a typical like urban fantasy novel. It's really set in our modern world, but there is a lot of world building in it that's, I felt like, pretty good. I felt like the world building was good in this book. It was very hard. It was very easy to understand like what's all going on as far as what the different properties of magic are and the different houses. And even though we didn't get an in-depth like breakdown of what the personality of each of the houses were, I felt like we got a good understanding of what the House of Marionne is like. And I did like that there is a romance in here, but it was definitely a slow burn. So if you like a very slow burn romance where like nothing happens, not even a kiss happens until like later on in the story, then this is the book for you. And this is young adult, and so there really isn't any spice in it. I want to say maybe like just like a couple like passionate kisses or something, but other than that, like nothing happens in this book, which I appreciated. And yeah, I really liked it. I honestly bought it because I read JL's other books and her specifically fantasy books, and I did enjoy them. And obviously, the cover, like, guys, the cover is beautiful. The book is gorgeous. But I did appreciate like the amount of effort that went into building up these characters, like the major plot twists and the relationships and how they ebbed and flowed and changed really made a lot of sense because JL took her time with building this up. I can see how someone would say this world building was a little bit too slow, but I personally enjoyed it because I already was familiar with her style of writing fantasy from the duology that she had, the Wings of Ebony duology. So I was used to that and I anticipated that. And, you know, in the end, I did really enjoy this book. And I will just tell you, these last like 100, last 50 to 100 pages in this book had me out. I was so shook because everything that she had put in, all the little like Easter eggs and little like nuggets, it made sense of why like you get the perspectives that you do, why you meet the people that you do. It just made perfect sense. And I just was not expecting that ending at all. And so I am so ready for Shadows of Pearl to come out. I know it's coming out later on this year at some point. And yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to reread this, to remember, to make sure that I like remember everything, and I'm ready to get back into this world and see what Kel and all the people are getting into. And I believe I gave this 4 stars. Yes, I gave this 4 stars. Okay, and the last book that I read was The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. This is a classic that was, I believe, written in 1870s. Yes, 1870s. And this follows a host of characters, but particularly we're following Augustus Melmotte, who is this up and coming financier. He just kind of shows up out of nowhere in London society with a whole lot of money. And because of that, people are really intrigued by him. He's very mysterious. And also, you know, people who have eligible men to marry his daughter are, you know, lining up so they can get a piece of the pie. But there are just some weird circumstances on how he got his money, and you get to find out about how he got his money. There's a lot of like secrets and stuff like that that's going on. But then we also have so many characters. Like there are different families that we meet and we get to know them on a personal level, like the Carberrys and the Nitterdales and the Longstaffs, and yeah, so all those people. And I will just tell you this book, I was kind of nervous. I thought that I was gonna lose track of all the people and that I wasn't going to enjoy it as much, or the language in it was going to, you know, throw me off. But this story was, it was messy in the best way. And let me explain. Like, it wasn't anything like scandalous, like super duper scandalous going on. But it was just like people were just so, these interpersonal relationships were all over the place. We got people proposing to people even though they're kind of engaged with somebody else. We got people that are, you know, giving love declarations, and then people being like, I don't like you like that. I don't really feel you kind of like that. So keep it moving. I actually like, you know, your friend. All those types of things were going on in this book. And it was so good. It was so interesting. I gave this 4 stars. I almost like it's 4.5 stars. I think I'm going to bump it up to 4.5 because of the fact that the only thing that I didn't really care for in this story was that there was some parts where people were like gambling and things like that. And like, I couldn't keep track on like who lost to who in the card games and all that. I just didn't care enough, honestly. I didn't care enough. So that kind of went over my head. But other than that, this story was very interesting. It had me like in it. Like I thought this book is like over like 700 pages. And I was very nervous that I was kind of like not care, gonna get bored, but nothing stopped. The pace just kept going and different things were getting revealed, you know, different relationships were getting revealed, and there's money issues popping up, and it was very interesting. And it kind of reminded me of Anna Karenina. So if you read that book, I do recommend giving this book a try if you've never heard of it, because the same thing where there's like a lot of like interpersonal relationships and people are like that person's brother and that person's sister and that cousin second remove, and then they're all like kind of like related in some way, shape, or form, and just the mess. Similar. I would say read this. Not quite as scandalous as Anna Karenina, but if you want to see a story where you have realistic characters making somewhat questionable decisions. And then essentially what you reap, you will sow. What you reap, you will sow. Essentially what you sow, you will reap. Then yeah, I think you will enjoy this book. I definitely did. And I'm, as you can see, I tabbed the mess out of this book. And I'm looking forward to doing this, to rereading it again, because I did enjoy this a lot. So overall, I feel like my reading for the quarter went fairly well. I read at least 8 books, and one of them was a 5-star. I didn't get as many 5 stars so far for the year, but I feel like that's fine. I read a great amount of books, more than I anticipated to read in the first quarter because of everything that was going on. And then also, I found a lot of books that surprised me, books that I didn't really anticipate loving or enjoying as much as I did. So that's always great. So thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment below and let me know which of these books that you've read. And if you haven't read any of these books, go ahead and let me know the book that you read in the first quarter that really blew your mind. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.